Good evening and happy Monday, everybody. I hope you all had a holy and refreshing weekend. And we are kicking things back off tonight with another open mic here. And I actually want to pick up where last week's episode left off. The final 10 minutes, friend of the show, Mark Lefebvre of the YouTube channel Navigating Patterns, um, just kind of brought up a trick he uses to see if somebody's got a certain, say, cognitive capacity. It's the ability to think in threes. The ability to think in threes, and that was kind of where we dropped off. And honestly, I'd never thought of, we'll say thoughts in the prudential order, right? So we're trying to figure out what is the best way to proceed with something or another. That's where the prudential order comes in. And if you're incapable of thinking in threes, then you're going to have a very difficult time making decisions. And, it might be that you're just at this time incapable of thinking in threes, or it might be that you're permanently incapable of thinking in threes. And I'm not quite sure how necessarily if people are ever that. But what do I mean? Let's go and put some meat on these bones here. So it's the ability to consider kind of three ideas in your head at once. Now, most people are quite adept at considering two ideas in their heads at a time, right? But where people get in trouble and where sometimes you get some people really making a mess out of things is when they can't consider a third thing. So, if you've watched maybe a few other videos on my channel about sacred music, you know that I'm quite passionate about the church's teaching on Gregorian chant and the use of that in the Roman liturgy. That's, right there in the Second Vatican Council. So there's like a positive thing that we go there. Not only is it beautiful, but the church itself says that Gregorian chant is good. So we could hold, Gregorian chant up here as the most suited for the liturgy. Now, that's got an implicit hierarchy built into it. So, kind of secular forms of music, we are saying that those are not so good, that those are not, well suited to the Roman liturgy. Uh, and this is an argument that I can make with you. Maybe you want to come on when we open it up here a little bit and make the argument with me. I'm not sure. But this is certainly something that you can look up. It's in Sacrosanctum Concilium. I think it's paragraph 112 that the Gregorian chant is the music most suited to the Roman liturgy. All right. So if you just get stuck in that binary, it'd just be like, oh, Gregorian chant good, secular music in the liturgy bad. Therefore, we just need to go ahead and just boom, implement Gregorian chant. Um, Now, is that really all the thinking that you need to do at that point? It might be, kind of a good basis for you to start off in, but um, I don't know if you've ever talked to anybody about liturgical music before, but that is instant opinions area that people really are, very passionate, regardless of their expertise, qualifications, or intelligence about the music that they hear at church. This is not an easy thing to talk about with people. So you got to be able to hold this third thing in your head while you're trying to discern the appropriate path forward. That people have grown attached to secular forms of music, even in the liturgy. So you got to have those three things in your head if you're going to, let's say, be a good priest here. That the church asks for Gregorian chant, the secular music is unsuited to the liturgy, but can we understand that we're not just going to be able to flip a switch one weekend flip everything around and um, do things perfectly. Like this is going to be a process. This is going to be probably at times a battle. And it's not so simple as you just show people Sacrosanctum Concilium in a paragraph 112 and say, hey, this is what Vatican II asked for. Why aren't you doing it? People are more complicated than that. This is going to be something that you have to work with. And so you, in order to actually make this decision properly, you need to be able to consider at least these three things. Uh, and that's a cure for binary thinking. The binary thinking is what leads people to rather extreme and unhelpful behavior, that they will uh, just pick like one goal and doggedly pursue it, and without being able to see kind of the full effects of what they are doing, what they are up to there. So let's take another example. This one's going to be maybe a little bit spicier and maybe a little bit more trad. So we'll see. We'll see if I end up in anybody else's sermon for this one, right? One could certainly make the argument that the committee tasked with implementing this document of the Second Vatican Council on liturgy exceeded their mandate. They went beyond what the majority of the bishops had either implicitly or explicitly put into the text of Sacrosanctum Concilium and what they were expecting there. You can make this argument that the concilium, that's what that body is called, exceeded her mandate, and therefore doesn't the new missal and the new mass don't accurately represent the intention of the Council Fathers. So we'll just take that. That's certainly a very common opinion among people who are of a more traditional bent in the Catholic Church. That's got an implicit binary built into it. So you could just say this one statement, the concilium exceeded the mandate given to her by the Second Vatican Council. So it's got an implicit binary that, what they produced was inferior, and that maybe the old ways are superior. You got this implicit binary built into that. That's where you get some of the more extreme manifestations of Catholic traditionalism, where they'll say the new ordination rite is invalid. The Novus Ordo Mass is illicit and cannot fulfill your Sunday obligation. That the chair of Peter is now entirely corrupted, and we need to break off and go do our own thing. And so if you're going to navigate that well, and if you want to hold on to that opinion, you need to have that third thing in there. And this is the third thing. This is the third thing, right? I'm pretty convinced of the opinion that I've articulated there. There's a third thing. The third thing is you stay on the boat. You stay on the boat. You can swim for yourself for a while, actually. You could jump off the boat, and for a while you could swim, but you can't swim far enough. The only way to get across this water is to stay on the boat. And so, maybe the concilium exceeded her mandate. Maybe the old ways are better. Stay on the boat. Nothing good's going to come from splitting off there. So, that's this is how people who are worthy and responsible and able to really lead and to lead well. This is how you would think, that you consider, maybe an ideal, what you want to stay away from, and all the things in the middle that complicate the pursuit of that ideal. You need to be able to think in these threes. So what does this mean if you don't have the capacity to think in threes the way that you might want to? That might just mean that you have to trust people, and I think there's a great many people out in the world who don't have this sort of flexibility, nuance, cognitive capacity. I don't know, just regular old fashioned prudence. Um, they might just have to accept leadership from people. They might say, Father, this is all really complicated stuff. But when you just told me to stay on the boat, I can manage that, and I'm just not going to worry about the liturgy wars raging in the church. I'm just going to stay on the boat, and it's like good, good. If that's actually the one thing you heard from me, and the one thing you understood in this entire little rant here, that you need to stay on the boat, then that is good enough, because those sorts of rules will keep you well. And looks like we've had uh, some talk. So yes, we're getting this show on the road here, and Mark is here. An example of someone who could not think in threes. That's Hegel. Yeah, yeah. He's famous for nobody actually reading what he wrote. Famously dense writing there. Tritone music is of the devil. Well, it might just not be suited for the sacred liturgy. There is actually I heard a fascinating comparison between Hebrew rabbi chanting and it's called the tonus peregrinus, the pilgrim tone. That wasn't quite right. What is it? And that's the Latin tone, and the Hebrew tone was kind of similar. So it was kind of fun to see that. Yes, Mark. Yes, we're going to eliminate Stand By Me. Going to eliminate it. We have a plan. We have the people in place. The Holy Spirit is blessing our efforts.
Good.
We just got to
spiritual malpractice. Spiritual
malpractice. Yeah, and implicit binary. That's what I figured out. That's why I don't recognize binaries as often as I should, because sometimes they're implicit. You say this thing's good. It's like, oh well, that implies that what's not that is bad. So that's very useful.
I like it. That was good. I like your third way too. I can approve that. I'm reverting back to my old internet ways. So we used to have a thing we did online all the time where we put TM and R after things we said all the time. It was a fad for a few years. It was really fun. Those are the fun days of the internet. Now all you guys are here, and kind of
all us youngins, all us kids,
all you internet kids. Some of y'all are old enough not to be kids, but in internet years, you're like puppies.
Okay. I mean, Kirk's not here, but
even the people are like, I've been on the internet 10 years. I'm like, yeah, just calm down. You know nothing.
We got high-speed internet in like 2005. I may have been given a little too much free time on it. So
I had, well, depending upon your definition of high speed, I don't know if you know this, but they kept changing the definition.
Right, because files got bigger.
Yeah. I had dual channel ISDN digital, which is 64K per channel times 2. And then symmetrical DSL into the house at T1 speeds, basically up and down, in the 90s to the house.
Yeah, 128 bits a second would be, or what is it, kilobytes a second? That'd be pretty fast in the 90s. Yeah.
Oh, it was blindingly fast because they didn't have graphics for, no one used graphics for anything. So
yeah.
Everything
so I would say it was the move from dial-up to DSL. That's what I'm marking as, because it used to be, like when you had dial-up, it's like, well, okay, we got to really ask if we're allowed to use this, and because like the phone line would be out, when we were doing that, and we couldn't receive incoming calls.
Didn't have multiple phone lines?
No, my dad was a staff sergeant in the Air Force who was putting 5 children through Catholic schools. We had one phone line.
Oh my God, how did you survive? Yeah, you wouldn't remember the 300 baud modem days. That was fun. And then it was 600. I mean, no one really had 600. Everyone went straight to 1200, and then it was 2400. I was like, oh, we're living large now. It's all diamonds and yachts from here on out. You know, and then they have the breakthrough with the 19.2, right? The 56, the 19.2, all this crazy stuff based on the new encoding technologies and using higher frequencies. And yeah, it's those are the good old days. No one was stuck in a binary, because to get online, you had to be smart. You had to be smart. You had to have a lot of equipment. Didn't have to be super expensive, but like,
you need to be able to set it up.
Well, but people were also making decisions like, do I get a stereo for my used car, or do I get online? Because it's right in that line, right? Like, computers are pretty expensive. They're used car expensive, right? They're not, it's not new car expensive, but it's used car for a very long time. And so you have two great filters, because just buying the equipment's not enough. We had a few people that didn't belong there, but we set them. There's only a few of them, because their grandchildren or their cousin or whatever hooked them up and gave them macros so they could just hit one key to get online and stuff. Because otherwise, you don't know what you're doing to get online.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I suppose. I guess I'm just. In internet terms, I'm not quite old enough to drink yet.
Not quite, sir. You're getting there, though. You're coming along nicely. We'll welcome you in. Yeah, if you haven't been traumatized by Goatsy, or you think lol cows are like recent or something, then you might as well have got here yesterday, son.
I heard the whispers about Goatsy. That's it.
I really think there should be a class action lawsuit in there somewhere, because my goodness, the amount of trauma that caused. Oh, that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible. And I knew a couple of people involved, and they were pretty we'll say low moral character people. So they were not above the sort of lowest of the low of the images of Goatsy, because some of them were quite harmless, but that quickly changed. Like, things in technology changed so fast. Goatsy went from harmless fun about security and embarrassing people into instituting security on their web servers, into traumatizing people that did nothing wrong and didn't need to see that ever in their lives. And yeah, it's too bad. It's too bad. Alt dot wares slash dot, no, 14.4 slash dot. Come on. IRC, yeah, Gopher, Archie, Usenet. Now we're talking. I mean, alt.wares is a Usenet group, but still. Alt.beaniebabies.sex, still my favorite. So they would just take Beanie Babies and pose them in sexual positions. Hysterical, father.
This is a family-friendly live stream here.
They're Beanie Babies. They're Beanie Babies.
Yeah, right. And most of my friends, my age, have small children around us. They've got this playing on their TV. Like, we gotta.
I'm just saying, it was hysterical. It was hysterical. Well, no one. I mean, kids couldn't get on back then, and even if they could, they'd never be able to use news groups. Actually,
remember, we were like, it was circa 1998, 1999, and we were trying to get cheat codes for Mega Man X4, and like navigating it was just like, we're all huddled around the family computer, and my oldest brother's the one with the mouse and the keyboard, and then Andrew's like trying to tell him what to do, and he's getting really annoyed by it. I'm just like, what is this?
What is this strange technology?
I knew about the computer, I knew how to play Lego Island. You just put the Lego Island disc in there, and then open up the program. I could turn the computer on and do all that. But the internet, that was like, I didn't even know what the internet was. It's just something I wasn't allowed to use.
Load star.star, 8,1. So that's all I have to say about that. Yeah.
Okay. You gonna say anything else in the computer code to us tonight? Or are we gonna talk about false binaries?
I like the way you put it. A lot of the people that started the internet thing, were quite brilliant in some ways, but they were very stuck in the binary. Like, because every once in a while, some wise ass who doesn't know any better, even though they know I'm from Boston, will do something retarded and start yapping about how, well, the guys at the Free Software Foundation, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, which ones? Because I knew them all, because I was there. Like, they let me in, like, and I talked to them about this stuff, and it was and I believe them. I mean, I believe their naivete. I thought it was sincere. I thought they were retarded, but I thought it was sincere. Also, they could all program like circles around me for sure. Even today, I never got to be as good as probably any of those guys. But like, they were convinced no one would ever use any of this technology for bad things at all. I gave them examples. I said, so you can do this, and I understand you'd only ever use it this way, but couldn't somebody use it this way? And they're like, oh, yeah, but nobody would ever do that. Like, immediately, before I even asked the question about, aren't you worried about this? They were already stuck in the, no, only good things, only good things, only good things. All the bad things are things that aren't on the internet or aren't part of our free software movement or aren't part of technology or something. And that was I like the term you've coined here, implicit binary. Like, that's what it was everything that we do, everything on our medium that they kind of owned it, to be fair, is good. And everything else, and we built it good because everything else is not necessarily good. So they weren't necessarily like, oh, everything else is evil, but they were like, no, the goodness or the most goodness is here. We're because it's free software. Even after, so like Stallman, I first heard about this on one of the questionable bulletin board sites where there was a free Unix account, and I forget who I was talking to, and I don't remember if it was one of the mail programs or if it was a BBS chat, because those existed, or a BBS forms board or something, but special interest groups, SIGs, all the good stuff. But he said there's a free Unix account, and you log in, and he gave one of the machine host names, and he said you just use RMS, and I'm like, what? Let's get the username and passwords the same, and they're 3 letters. Like, who would do such a thing? And that was Stallman's account. And I talked to him about this later, because I didn't know him at the time. I was probably 16, right? Or maybe 15. I forget. It was a long time ago. But I didn't know it was a person. I said, what does it mean? He said, root means square. And I was like, what? Root means square. Okay, it's a math thing. Sounds reasonable to me. What did I know? I was a kid, right? And then I asked Stallman about it later, and he's like, no, I always wanted my accounts to be open, and I wanted people to be able to use them. And I'm like, well, that's great, but what if they misuse it? And so what happened is the Free Software Foundation, which was using MIT's domain names at the time, so they're all MIT.edu, were getting attacked left, right, and center by hackers. Well, you were on the hacking boards, or the pirate boards, as they used to be called, and that information was out there, and people were using that to learn Unix, fair enough, which is what he wanted, right? But they were also using those accounts to hack other accounts and, spread viruses and worms across the internet, all kinds of things, because they were stuck in this false binary of, well, the stuff we're doing is good and it's open, and because it's open, people won't misuse it, because the thing that corrupts it is apparently money in their minds. So if you pay for something, it can be corrupted, and it's probably corrupted by that money. As near as I can figure, that was how they would never say that, but that's how they were couching things. But it just turned out that, that's not that was not it. They were not right about any of that. So that was the binary they were stuck in. And I think that's an interesting way to look at fundamentalism.
Yeah, right. Like I'm gonna go back to church world, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got like the tech world, I've got the church world. Between the two of us, is there any domain we can't cover? And the answer is women, but never mind that.
Thanks. Great. Hopefully, Sarah.
We can only have an exterior perspective on that. That's
Oh,
all I'm
that's true.
saying. That's all I'm saying. It's sort of like, let's say somebody was in a bad way, in a secular way of living, and then they go to church and they say, well, when I was out in the world and living a life of hedonism, that was bad and I was around bad people. But now that I'm in church, I'm only going to be around good people. And it's like, really, I'm gonna try my best to be good and like encourage other people to be good, but this is not gonna be all good. And Jesus himself warned us about this. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that's thrown into the sea and it pulls up everything. And when we get the net onto the ground, we're going to sort them out, good and bad. But they're all going to be in the net there for a while together. He also said that the kingdom of heaven's like a field where there was good seed planted, and then an enemy came and sowed weeds in there that, at least on first appearance, look identical to the wheat, but they're toxic when you try and eat them. And they're going to grow up together. And at the end of the time, the wheat will be gathered into the barn, and the weeds will be burned. So he gives us like the formation there. There's three things, right? You've got the weeds, you've got the wheat, and you've got the waiting, because they're not going to be sifted out immediately. You're going to have to spend a little bit of time waiting for the weeds to be removed from your midst there. So like there's the three things right there. So it's almost as if even a fairly modest interaction with the parables of our Lord will give you a good sense of this three-way thinking there, and not getting trapped into false binaries. Maybe that's where I got it, because I got taken to church every Sunday. I just heard these stories when I was real little. Is that how that got in there? Who knows? These things
Probably.
Yeah, it's just completely mysterious. Nobody knows how this works.
Nobody indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so super useful tool, Mark. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad
finally understand what you mean by binary thinking.
That's interesting that my video doesn't work better. I'm always a little puzzled at it's, and it's all communication. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, do you have to think about it?" I'm like, "Well, I have to think about how to tell you about it, but I don't have to think about it because I'm already there. That's not the
Thinking is bad.
Yeah.
Well, thinking is bad sometimes. Yeah, it's a lot of people doing. I got into this epic Twitter argument for like 24 hours or something with Truan, and who I know. Like I know we hung out on the Vervaeke server, and it was just him trying to rewrite U.S. law over and over again. And I'm going, yeah, but that's not U.S. law. So I know you want this thing to have happened a certain way, but like it didn't. Like I don't know. Like it just didn't. None of what you're saying happened. And then it got personal, which is fine with me, because you get personal with me, you're going to lose. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. Not around, running around womanizing. Like you're pretty well sunk if that's what you're going to do. So I pretty much took him to the mat. Very nicely though. Like I could have said all kinds of horrible things, and I was like, no. I'm just gonna explain to him why he's a failure.
I don't know. This is just continuing to reinforce for me why I'm not on Twitter. Like that doesn't sound like a good use of a Tuesday afternoon to me.
Twitter's a horrible place, except when it's not. And then he, unbeknownst to me, or I just didn't remember, he was on my Discord server. But of course, he's never posted. He's never said anything. He's never engaged in all the years he's been on there. So it's like, do you think this is a loss for us? Because we're doing all the work and you're not doing anything. Which, to be fair, he didn't do much on the Vervaeke server either. It was Manuel and I were, helping to prop him up, which we were happy to do. And, we were always offering help and he was always refusing. So sorry, dude. Like we tried, but that's the thing. Like, when you're stuck in the binary, you'll just rewrite U.S. law. I mean, I believe he's in South Africa. He doesn't know anything about U.S. law, right? You'll just rewrite U.S. law, and you're you're doing moral proclamations from South Africa? Really? Is that your move? Because about people getting shot and killed it from really? That's your move? Okay, then. I guess. I don't
Your
think you're gonna win that.
guarantee on this YouTube channel is that 100% of my moral proclamations will be backed up by the magisterium of the Holy Roman Church.
Excellent, Father. I love it.
So, you know,
I love it. We need more education on Vatican II and what went horribly wrong. Because I was listening to
Was it all horribly wrong?
no, none of what was written was wrong, but what happened was.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what
Yeah.
you're saying. Yeah.
I was listening to Rachel Fulton Brown's last, which was a couple of weeks ago now, because she skipped last week. And yeah, they brought that up, but I don't think they see it the way you see it, Father. So that would be good to.
are they a little more negative on what was written? Are they a little more? Like, what's the distinction? I'm just curious. And who's they? Is it just Rachel or like her friends?
Yeah, you're talking
or-
about the State of Acondas? Who are you talking about?
No, she's on there with one of her friends. I call them the girls just because that's fun. They prattle on a little bit much sometimes, but that's to be expected. Yeah, and I've had Rachel Fulton Brown on my channel a couple of times, and probably will again, at least one more time, if not more, hopefully, because she's lovely to talk to. But no, I mean, I would just like, I think, and I did leave a long comment in case it was helpful, of course. I think it's just a lack of appreciation for the difference between what was written and what happened. And then, because if you don't have that differentiation, then you're going to think that, we'll say, the cause of the problem is Vatican II, and not, I think actually I wrote this out too, and not like what was crouching at the door waiting for the door to be opened but a little bit, because that indicates that the problem existed and was just waiting for an opening. Well, that changes how you think about what was going on and whether or not it was even in fact related. And actually, I just recorded a video. It won't be out till next week, but I just recorded a video, and I think I covered some of that in there, because I do the timeline for the Age of Gnosis. So I've done the whole Age of Gnosis timeline in a quick, high level fashion. Hopefully that will be understandable. It's all stuff you can look up real quick and see, like, oh, this is interesting, right? So hopefully that will work. We'll see.
Yeah. That was one of the things when I was, kind of early on in seminary, and I'm starting to grapple with this Vatican II thing. I was thinking about, and maybe somebody made this point to me, and I just don't know who to cite at this point, but it's like, if everything was like really robust, at 1965, right? Then even if, let's say, the worst, most stupidest imaginable council had happened, if the whole church is robust, it would be able to like weather that and endure that. But if there was, a lot of things that were already kind of toppling or teetering or had become brittle by that point, then the best council in the world couldn't save it if the people who were supposedly running these things didn't really, have the faith in mind and weren't really, participating with their whole mind and heart in grace of God, and so it wouldn't have all fallen apart, as dramatically as it did, and thousands of sisters leaving the convent, thousands of priests abandoning ministry, ridiculous innovations in the liturgy, all of that stuff. Like, a strong body would have resisted that better there. So, was it only a matter of time, and that was just the little thing that put things over the edge? I don't know. All I know is stay on the boat.
Stay on the boat.
Stay on the boat.
That was really good. I like that. Yeah, it didn't mandate no more Latin mass, right? That's not in there.
The use of the Latin language is to be preserved. That is explicitly,
explicitly in there, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
it's
they were
also
treating it.
explicit.
They were treating it like it said that, and I was like, no, that's not in there. That's not correct.
Right, yeah. So you got to look at the timeline here. Sacrosanctum Concilium was promulgated in 1963, and the new mass came out in 1970. So like, there was a period of time when things were happening, where like, and then people involved there, and I've got a video on my channel where I explain this in depth, but I think I can't remember which paragraph it is, but it says to the effect, no changes should be made unless the good of the faithful truly and certainly requires it. Which I think should have been the interpretive key for the entire liturgical reformation. It's like, okay, we've got a really high bar. I'm just thinking in legal terms, right? Like we got
Yeah.
this presumption against change, which whatever proposed change has to be able to overcome, right? So yeah, here we are. We're just kind of dealing with it. So that's, I mean, that's where the confusion, comes in, because it's like, well, one thing did lead to another, but was it? Yeah, and it's a legislative body, right? So you've got, like 2,000 bishops who voted in favor of Sacrosanctum Concilium, right? It's like, well, what were they all thinking they were getting, right? And a lot of them might have been thinking they were going to get, a somewhat conservative, that, okay, we're going to switch to a 3-year lectionary cycle. We're going to, do some minor reordering about where you're going to have, your wedding ceremonies, and, a little bit of more flexibility in that. Maybe another sprucing up of the calendar, which, the calendar's been tinkered with for a while, that's not. And then they get something else entirely, So
some
that's
of them
why
wanted
there's
the
confusion, is
unlimited
because it's
power.
confusing. Yeah.
Some of them for sure were just, I just want the power to make change, and this is that whole thing about correlation and causation. And one of these days, I'm going to figure out how to communicate this, but you can't pull one thing. You think you pull more than one thing is going to get drawn in.
Okay, so you're saying PULL,
Yes.
not POLL. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah, because there isn't one thing ever.
Yeah.
Mark,
Everything's linked some ways, in ways you don't see.
I am gravitationally affecting you right now.
Exactly.
Any
right.
physicist in the world would say that my gravity's pulling on you all the way from North Dakota. Now, we
But-
wouldn't
but
be
it's-
able to measure the effect, but
it's worse because there's a presumed effect from your speech, and that may work for half the audience and it may not for the other half, right? So put one pull or push of speech and multiple results, which maybe they correlate, right? But that doesn't mean my speech caused them, because in order to misinterpret, especially my speech, I'm just going to tell you very precise. You have to project into it, like you have to, because my speech is pretty darn clear most of the time. I slip up, but not as much as most people do. So it's very revealing.
Yeah. People are listening for what they want to hear a lot of times.
That's that open door, right? They hear something that they can interpret favorably to their pre-existing bias.
Because why
then
would you, like, I don't even think that's necessarily, like, that's kind of like I don't know what the right word for it is. It's kind of like a pro-social move right there. Like, man is a friend to all men. There's
we're cooperative
nothing.
creatures.
Yeah, we're cooperative creatures, and so you want to assume that the person you're talking to is mostly like you, And so when they say, I want justice for everybody, yeah, of course we want justice for everybody. Who could possibly disagree with that? But if they've got some, insane warped notion of justice that's going to be like, put all of the kulaks into the gulag. Like, well, okay, that's not what I meant when I said justice for everybody. I just like, let's have courts that function properly and judges who aren't corrupt, right? Like that'd be great. That'd be as much as I could ask for. So yeah, it's a tricky trick that you could exploit, which is why all of these abusive gurus always just say the fluffiest things.
Yeah. Abstraction is a wonderful place to hide in, and people are very bad at noticing abstraction now too. Like 5 or 6 years ago, it wasn't as bad. I measure these things. I actually count, as you can. Most people are lazy and they don't. But like, you can actually count. And if you actually count, especially if you do the same experiment over and over again, which I tend to do, sometimes anonymously, by the way. So, the internet's a wonderful place, kind of, for manipulation. It's easy to see these things change if you're measuring them. They definitely changing, and you can tell where they're changing and how they're changing. And it's not a good sign when people get very confused of the difference between an abstraction and something that has zero abstraction. Like grass is green is not the same as grass feels good, right? Like these are very different statements, but people can't tell them apart anymore.
I mean, the grass feels good would be a bit more of a concrete, direct statement. Green's a little more abstract.
It depends which perspective you're taking. Grass is green is abstract across people. Grass feels good is specific to a person, but it's abstract in that feels good isn't the same across people at all.
Oh yeah, right. Because people might like it when it's like cool and wet and cooling their feet off.
Yep.
Other people might like it when it's like dry and kind of like exfoliating. They might like okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Because
where's the abstraction?
Yeah.
Right. Whereas green, it would be considered less abstract because that would be more common amongst more people because it's a quality or a property. Yeah, in science, it would be a property. In any reasonable language, it would be a quality of the grass. And then you could talk about the quality of the quality. That's intimacy, right? This is that quality has basically infinite self-similar fractal recursive depth. So the greenness can have different qualities on top of the fact that it's green. And those are just additional abstractions, but they're qualities, and they're not they're not abstract across people until you dig down, right? So a bright green versus dark green, but in general, grass is green.
Yeah. Yeah, that's useful enough right there. All right, so we've got a nice easy thing to hook into. Like, what do you mean when you say grass feels good? Does it feel good when it's just been cut and you're walking it at bare feet, or does it feel good when you're walking it in boots? Right, so you're comparing it against the concrete. I mean, there's like a thousand different ways that the grass could feel good right there.
Right.
So, how do people use this sneaky abstraction to bring in a destructive message to somebody?
Well, I mean, you had a good one earlier, right? Justice. So one thing you can do is you can slam two abstractions together with no grounding. And what happens when you do that is people, like, you have to pick a grounding because abstractions are abstractions, they float. So you could do something really, really evil and say social justice. So if you say, well, I'm for social justice, and you haven't taken a position on any issue, and you can have any position on any issue at any time and still conform to being for social justice because they're abstractions. And so when you slam two abstractions together like that, you really get a sky's the limit. And that's why when the people that do that act, behave, and cry out inconsistently, right? So one person gets shot in one circumstance, a different person gets shot in a different circumstance, and somehow they're for one shooting and against the other shooting. Well, how does that work? You should be against shooting, period. This isn't that hard, right? But they're stuck on the binary. And in order to get out of the binary, they use the oppositional force to just pick which side of the binary they're on at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so they always have a for and against, but it's not always on the same side. And so they can take any position at any time and feel justified because they're stuck in that binary. And you can't, because only two things doesn't, it's either very high or very low contrast. You can't tell. In fact, they probably can't tell they're on a different side of the binary. That's been my experience, is that if you try to reason with Struan, for example, he can't even tell that what he's advocating for makes no sense, and that he's actually on the wrong side every time he talks. Like the more he was just on the wrong side. And I was like, okay, so basically the outline that you gave at the beginning, every single statement you made is actually a lie. And so your formula relies on a lie to be true, right? And then of course you advocated for anarchism. And I was like, oh, well, anarchists bomb people. Everybody knows that. You're the bad team. This isn't that hard, right? If your arguments rely on lies, right, and have to rely on lies, you're the bad guy. And if you say you're an anarchist, anarchists are famous for bombing people in places all over the place, historically, just a historical fact. You can just count numbers, counting, not hard. They're the bad guys in all cases. This isn't that hard.
Yeah. So two things. So first of all, who's a he in this circumstance?
Struan, Cummings. He's been floating around these parts for
this was an argument on Twitter. Just and Mark's very proud of the way he conducted himself on Twitter today. So
Struan Cummings?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll look it up. And the second thing is, believe it or not, you're echoing a position I've heard Ayn Rand expressed in her theory of concepts of the danger of floating of abstraction. So
big Ayn Rand fan, dude. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I love Ayn Rand. Not a philosopher. Still love Ayn Rand. Almost everything she says is bang on. And I haven't read all her stuff. I gotta read a couple more of her shorter books. But I have read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. In fact, I think I read The Fountainhead twice. And I have them in the shed annotated. So like I have little markers in the books that show me all the good stuff.
So that explains it. He read it. This is like me, saying, wow, there's this, let's talk about 5 ways that we could demonstrate God's existence. It's like, well, that sounds like Aquinas. Well, yeah. It's because that's where I'm stealing it from.
Same. Like I read Nathaniel Branden, who was her lover, apparently, and his critique, and was able to rip it apart because I know Ayn Rand pretty freaking well. Thank you very much. I there's only a handful of books I've read more than once, Kirk, and those books are ridiculously long. They're like 12 or 1,400 pages each or something goofy. But I did read at least one of them. I probably read both of them twice. So yeah, I'm really well versed on Ayn Rand. And I agree with most of what she said. Just it's not a philosophy because she doesn't take into account children. So what she has is basically an ideology. Now I happen to believe that her ideology is pretty damn good. And if you get to adopt one, pick that one. Thank you very much. But it doesn't work.
It would need a little more supplementation to fill it in, or is it more than that?
No. I mean, this is part of Branden's critique of her work. He became a psychologist, and I think he was like 18 or 17 when he had an affair with her, and she was married, and she was not anywhere near that age. It's just like okay. And I think she dedicated one of her books to him, but it was a long time ago I did this research. But his point was, wow, a lot of people in their teenage years between like 14 to 19 seem to pick her up pretty well. But there's a filter there, right? So the reason why you don't need much for Ayn Rand is because the filter is, if you're not a self-starting, go-getter, work kind of person who's motivated to like do stuff in the world, then you ain't gonna find nothing in her anyway. It's just slide right off your ass. if you're a communist, it'll slide right off you. You won't resonate with any of it. Because the communists obviously are the bad guys in her novels. So and her reasoning about communism is perfectly correct. I don't recall anything being particularly wrong. I might be misremembering slightly, but I don't think she's wrong about anything there.
You could say almost anything bad about the communists and I'll believe it immediately because that's exactly what I want to hear. But
well, there are a few. I don't agree with any of the approaches that people take towards communism who don't start out with communism and capitalism have nothing in common because one's a political system and the other is an economic system. Like to say the United States is capitalist, it's like, well, yeah, so is every other country in the Western Hemisphere and every country on the continent of Europe, and about half the African nations are also capitalist, because capitalism is an economic system that doesn't really interfere with the political system. The two don't have to have any overlap, as China has now proven, by the way, right? Because China is capitalist on the coasts, in the coastal cities, and it's basically restrained or not capitalist in the interior, like explicitly. And that's not because it's communist. It still has a communist political system. But that's a political system. It's communism is quite compatible with capitalism. There's no such thing as unrestrained capitalism. That's never ever been tried. Not that I think it should be, but what you're constraining is a whole different thing. In China, you can make as much money as you want as a single person. They don't care. But the amount of money you have to share with the government is a little bit different. So on the other hand, they give you all kinds of benefits, right? Because they need people to leave the bubble, right? But you don't want the peasants leaving the bubble, because the peasants see what's going on outside. They're not going to stay. But if the people making money who are motivated and ready, willing, and able to work, the Ayn Rand crowd that's in China, and there's quite a few of them just because it's a huge freaking country, there's a lot of people. Well, if they see that stuff, but they're participating in it, they're not going to leave China ever. Like, none of the wealthy Chinese businessmen, maybe there's a few, but they didn't leave. They're all still there. They're happy to help the China spy on the US and Europe and anyone else they want, Australia. They don't care at all, right? Because they have a good life. And so, but they're also the type of people that would resonate with Ayn Rand, because they're self-starting go-getters who are capable, right? They're competent, and they're highly. What Ayn Rand's really writing about for her protagonists in her books are, they're borderline heroes. I would say they're borderline divine, actually, but they're super competent people, right? Like Rourke is sitting there running the factory by himself. It's like, what? he's shoveling the ore and refining the ore and making his own steel, and because he learned all that, because he learned everything to be able to build the skyscraper. This, of course, sets up a whole alternative mythos, post Great War, right? So you want to talk about the World War II myth? Well, Ayn Rand comes along with a refinement to the World War II mythos, and that's quite helpful, at least in the short term. But ultimately, she's also stuck in the binary, because everything in her world is, it's either communism or freedom or something. I'm not really sure that you can't really call it, again, because she has the communism capitalism binary, which is just like, you're just playing into Marx's hand, but Marx was wrong and didn't have a definition. So why would you go there? Still a binary.
Well, that's kind of interesting how just being an economic system and not a political system seems like.
Oh boy.
You keep cutting out, Kirk.
Yeah, we're.
I liked what you were saying, though.
I was saying you were.
No, not again.
Hello. Is this working?
Yeah, and then you cut out mid-sentence. It's very strange.
Okay.
Yeah, we got part of it. Capitalism is an economic system. That's true. Actually, I wouldn't even call it an economic system. Capitalism is a measure of how much free access you have to capital, technically. I think that's actually the best technical definition.
That's
right?
why it goes hand in hand with banks and lending at interest.
Right, and it states that because in the feudal period this was not true, right? So your capitalism was limited, but it states that your gold and the king's gold are worth the same, because in feudal Europe that was not the case. If you found gold, if the king gave you land and you found gold on it, it was his gold. And the thing was, see, and you can get cute and say, well, I'm going to trade it without him knowing. That actually was almost impossible to do, because what you would have to do is go basically to money launderers, which meant that the total gold value may have been worth the same, but your trade value on that gold was 30% off the top, bro, because I got to make my money smuggling the gold, because I'm doing money laundering for you, right? And so that would make the gold not the same value. That's my justification for that. Kings could trade gold between each other all day long. And interestingly, almost no one knows this, because everyone thinks Bretton Woods is a big deal, and it's FDR that causes you not to be able to trade gold in the United States in 44, 45, something like that. I forget, maybe it was before that, right? FDR is the one, right? But what Nixon cleverly does is he says, oh, well, we're no longer going to use gold as the floating currency between nations to transfer large amounts of value efficiently. That's what Bretton Woods does. But you have to know that. Like, you have to really dig into the history and go, oh, I see what they did. They took the gold because the economy expanded and became a global economy, right? Long before the economy was global, long before the 1900s. That global economy needed a way to trade, and it can't be the same as the way you and I trade anyway, because this is not possible, because they're dealing with really large numbers, right? What's the national debt and what's my debt? My debt sucks, by the way, but the national debt's a little bit worse by a few trillion or something. So you need a way to deal with that, and you're not going to pay that off in $100 bills, right? Like, you're not going to transfer $1 trillion in $100 bills. So you need a different form of currency. And a lot of the crypto fight is actually over that, because, to be as fair as I can to crypto, good way to transfer large amounts of value for no money and get rid of all the bankers at the same time.
Right. Well, I mean, even if you are in the black, right? Like, how much of your money are you actually holding on to in cash now? Like,
right.
it's data in some banks' computer systems. Like, that's where your money actually is. And so it's not, shocking to me that people would say, well, we could just have a public ledger now, and that'll be how we handle it.
Well, so what I was saying was just that what you're expressing, Mark, is true. But what I'm saying is, even though you're an Ayn Rand fan, it sounds like the opposite of how Ayn Rand thinks about capitalism. Like, as I understand her.
Yeah. She's using the Marxist non-definition of capitalism, like everybody else you'll ever hear talk is. I've been scouring the internet for decades looking for a reasonable definition of capitalism, and I'm going to tell you, there might be one or two out there, and I forget who I stole mine from, but very hard to find. Very hard to find. So it's not Ayn Rand's fault, but she's stuck in that binary that Marx set up. And to be fair, she's fighting Karl Marx explicitly. That is her job, right? I just wish she'd upgraded and said, no, you're comparing apples and oranges, because everybody's comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this would be maybe the easiest way to prove it, is that you could have a capitalist system that was identical, and it wouldn't matter if it was being run by a republic or by a monarchy.
That's right.
It'd just be like, well, I mean, like, it could be identical, right? Like, same banks, same laws, and
that's happened before. Like, people forget because they don't read history. Like, the Medici family had banks across the world under multiple governmental systems some of which were not monarchies.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, historically, we know that there is unrestrained or semi-restrained capitalism under various forms of government. Therefore, capitalism can't be a form of government. Also, where would you get that capitalism is a form of government? Nothing in capitalism talks about voting, rulers, leadership. Like, there's no government terms used to describe capitalism in any description I've ever heard.
And because Marxism has to be a form of government because it says the government owns all the property.
That's
sorry,
right.
sorry, excuse me. The people own all the property. My bad.
Right. They use this abstraction. We were talking about abstractions before to fool you. I have a video on this on navigating patterns called The Trick of Socialism. To fool you, right? They do it through examples, right? Personal examples. You and your neighbor could do this. Could, maybe, also not true, but whatever, they pull it off, right? They want to appeal to your cooperative nature. I'm sure I could cooperate with my neighbor in such a way that we could resolve any dispute. I would like to think that. I have had neighbors. That isn't true. I'm just going to tell you, right? Hopefully that will be true for you in your life. I do hope that for everybody, but I'm just telling you, there's not a guarantee. And then they imply that because two people can do that, and maybe two people can do that in most cases, that you don't need a government. That's the implicate, but it's all done by implication. Because to your point, well, yeah, the government has to control this, and the government's just the people. And therefore, there's really no government because it's just the people, right? But that's just their way of being in charge. And people miss the trick because they're only thinking in binaries. So if you're a binary thinker, if you're cognitively that low on the totem pole, sorry, but I don't care what your IQ is. I've seen some pretty high IQ people get stuck in binaries. This one in particular, you won't notice the trick at all. You'll be in university with a PhD and a 135 IQ, thinking communism's a great idea, and not realizing that communism is the most consistently totalitarian form of government that we know about. Because an oligarchy doesn't stay totalitarian for very long, typically, for various reasons. I mean, the oligarchy might stay intact. And I mean, even the Roman emperors. It was very rare in Rome's history you get two bad emperors in a row, guys. I hate to break it to you. But also, right, but with communism, you are guaranteed practically. You are guaranteed and locked in to totalitarian and typically tyrannical leaders. It's almost guaranteed because the constraints of what it's trying to do are that strong, right?
Yeah, I'm reminded of a quote by Friedrich Hayek that goes, "If socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialist."
Right. That's what bothers me, right? Everybody's read Hayek. People quote that all the time. And I'm like, you can't do the math on what that leads to logically. And then they scream, more logic, please. And I'm like, yeah, but if the world's made out of logic, you're screwed because you're really bad at logic. People don't get it. Just that one Hayek statement alone tells you right away what the problem is. You're comparing apples and oranges. It's not an economic system. Capitalism is only an economic system.
And it's like capitalism's it's not even one economic system. It's like a family of economic systems that have access to capital.
Well, again, it's best thought of as a measure. See, but this is like, I don't think in binaries. So these things stand out to me because I look at socialism and I look at capitalism and I read some, Karl Marx quotes, right? And I go, wait a minute, though. There's a third option here, and that gives me contrast. And I can go, but this is an apple and this is an orange because I have a lamp. And it shows one thing is orange and the other thing is green or red, depending on how you want to look at it. And therefore, and then you can go one step further. And this took me a while to figure out, to be fair. And I said, well, wait a minute. Capitalism isn't even an economic system. It's really because it's kind of a constant. Right. So like if you were in the noble class in Europe throughout the Middle Ages, if capitalism were a measure, you had a high degree of capitalism because you had access to capital, and you could transfer capital cheaply. That's really the three things we're measuring, right? do you have capital, or are you capable of having capital, right? Which is different, right? In other words, can you build something and move to a new economic class? Whether you move to a new social class is a different question, but can you move to a new economic class? That's like the highest form of capitalism. That's what we have in the United States, sort of by necessity, right? Because we didn't have an upper class that held us down. We still have upper class. There's still, Mayflower money out there, and draws the American Revolution money out there in Connecticut, right? These things are still there, but they never held anybody back.
Because you can just
that's
go
the
out
big
west.
difference. Yeah.
You just keep going west, You go to Arkansas, go to Nebraska.
But they didn't. But they didn't ever squash the competition. Like in Europe to this day, because some of the families, like there are countries in Europe still, and the continent of Europe, and in England, or in the UK, I should say, there are places that still have majority of the money in a few families, and it's been that way for hundreds of years, exceeding the life of what we call the United States. Obviously, we're not even that old, so we don't have that. But those families control things to such a degree that if you want to do something, you have to go through them. It's just right, and it's a different family based on what you want to do, but also they control entire industries. We never did that here for any length of time. The railroads, right? The shipping, the whatever.
And then we passed antitrust legislation and broke everything up.
The government always had enough power and was always separate enough because we didn't have a noble class that made up governance. The government would always go after those things. So they were always able to put a cap on it.
Yep.
It's scaled up mafia, but then the only reason why you have a mafia is if your government isn't filling that need. And then if your government's not filling that need, the mafia is the right answer. You'll get better justice out of the mafia than you will out of the legal system. That's for sure, at least in the US right now. I see no problem.
You just got to tolerate the injustices as well. It's like, what are you gonna
Well, when they're there, the problem is a lot of the mafia, we'll say by the 90s, and they were legitimate businessmen. And if you did something really, really bad and you deserved it, you might end up floating in the river or in a canal. And that happened. And that's quicker than going through court for 5 years. So I'm all for it. Sorry. I don't want to, as someone who's been through court a couple times, I'm just going to tell you, if I had the right contacts, we would have gotten this done the right way. And that would have been better than what happened. So.
Yep. Oh, you want justice for everybody, don't you, Mark?
I do. I'm happy with that solution. I think it would be great. That was the great confusion between who is a criminal. And this isn't hard. Like, I didn't break any laws. I haven't even been accused of breaking any laws. So I don't know why I'm losing court cases. I didn't break it. Other people did break laws, and that's evident. Like it's in independent evidence in a case file that you could look up if you weren't lazy. Not that I suggest that you do, but also, before you imply that I'm a criminal somehow, you might want to look for where the real criminals actually are, because it's documented and everything by third-party independent observers, no less. So yeah, conflating, we'll say, any of the things that happened with me, losing my property to criminals, with me being a criminal because somehow I was involved in a court battle, is ridiculous. And yet that is exactly what happened on Twitter, which just cracked me up, quite honestly, because I was like, if you don't understand the difference between criminal behavior and non-criminal behavior, between criminal conviction and civil conviction, then the odds you should be speaking about law are approximately, you should be jailed for talking about it or something. Like, these people just should not be allowed to speak publicly on issues. If that's what you're confused about, you really shouldn't talk about it publicly, right? It's kind of dangerous.
Yeah. So Benedict Gregory the 16th was right. Once again, he was the one who's like free speech. That's really dumb. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
what
now
are
that-
you gonna go around and just let people sell poison to other people?
Right.
With the argument like, well, the antidote's also freely available. Like, no, that's dumb. You can't do that.
Right. Or lie. Right. I mean,
Mhm.
this is the free speech advocates will let people lie because you have to if you're for free speech, right? And they don't understand the contradiction. I was just listening to Benjamin Boyce's latest, and they're doing the free speech thing, and they're like, well, blah blah. And I'm like, guys, I hate to break it to you, but there's actually only one place with free speech of any kind, and that actually is only the U.S. And it's never been anywhere else ever. I don't know what to tell you, but you need to read. It's not that hard, right? But in the U.S., to be fair, we never had unbridled free speech. The free speech rights were specifically to speak out against the government. They weren't for any other purpose. Hey, there's Ron.
Hi, guys.
Good to see you.
Did you get a bunch of snow? Did you slay it?
Yeah, we got about 15 inches.
Whew.
There you go.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Now you're in a part of the world that 15 inches is nothing to sneeze at, but you can handle it, right? It's like, we'll be shut down for a day. We got to send the plows out, get the thing salted.
Yeah. So I went to work Sunday, and I'm getting home now. I had a chance to come home and sleep, but I had to get a ride with my friends who have 4-wheel drive and stuff like that. So we cleaned up, and we salute you both.
I've got an
We had a
early
little
morning
freezing
tomorrow,
rain.
so we're just drinking water tonight. But you got to be careful here, Ron. You got to be careful.
Well, I'm with Catholics. It's okay.
There you go.
And also, I am making mead and wine. And if I get addresses, I will ship you guys some. I can't sell it. I can't trade for it, but I can give it away.
All right. I'll take that. Is it going to be here before Lent starts?
When is Lent?
Oh gosh, Ash Wednesday. I've got it on my calendar here.
It's coming.
It's in like about 4 weeks, basically.
Actually, I need to give it some time to grow.
Yeah, you got to ferment it, right?
Yeah,
Ash Wednesday's on the 18th of February.
I'll tell you what. When's the next holy day I can send it to you anytime. I just need to let it age. But if there's a holy day you want.
Well, let's I think let me pull my calendar out again. We should be able to have a good time on the Feast of St. Joseph. That'll be before Holy Week starts. That'll be March 19th.
Well, we can do that.
And St. Joseph, Mark has a devotion to St. Joseph. He's the reason that my phone didn't give out that night we got lost in the woods.
Oh yeah. Right. Yes, absolutely. I do, Father. Yes, 100 times yes. That was that whole evening was really weird.
Well, did you have a woo moment or something?
Well, Mark and I went for a hike.
Okay.
There were no
Maps.
none of the maps that were where they were supposed to be. And I'm like, well, Mark's probably got his phone. We could just look it up. Mark left his phone in the car. I had my goofy dumb phone, which was running low on batteries. And we had to contend with very incompetent emergency services.
Very.
And
very
here he is. Please.
Well,
I'm sorry,
wonderful.
sir. I don't know why she had you do that. That was my line of the night right there.
That was hysterical.
And I'm looking at my phone, and it's like 2%. And I'm like, St. Joseph, this phone can't die.
Uh-huh.
And you know what? It stayed at 2%, Just like the Elijah, the widow, and Zarephath.
Okay, yeah,
The jar of flour didn't go dry, and
right.
the jug of oil didn't run empty,
Okay.
and my
Yeah.
phone didn't run out of juice, and the park rangers came and picked us up with ATVs, and we didn't freeze.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, really? It was getting bad. Yeah.
Well, we didn't stop until it was like dark. So,
I mean, it gets dark real quick around here.
Okay.
So, yeah.
and
Right.
it was January, you know.
Oh,
It was January. It wasn't particularly super warm at night. So
okay.
yeah,
I don't.
it was dicey.
We probably could have survived that, but it would have been very, very unpleasant.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We could have managed something probably, but yeah, it would
not
have,
be, yeah, like
yeah, that
so.
yeah.
St. Joseph, you know.
All right, nice.
problem
So-
solved.
I got a question for you guys, and I don't know if it's going to flow with your conversation. If it won't, I won't bring it up. Because you're talking about commies. I mean the joke. All right, for those who are watching, I'm not trying to be too political, but you were talking about different systems of government and economics. Was it government, economics?
Well, that's the point that Mark's making, is that communism's a system of government, and capitalism is like a
Oh,
feature of economic systems that can be more or less capitalistic.
so
you know.
okay. Because for me, for my landscaper work, understanding of economics and definitions, it seems like capitalism is just trading. It's the open market.
It's the level of freedom of trade you have, or freedom of access to capital.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So
But when you hear people talk about it, Ron, they'll say, "Oh, the capitalist U.S." And it's like, well,
right.
actually, all the Western countries are capitalist to some extent. We might be the most capitalist, right? In other words, we have always had, for very well, since the late 1800s, we have had the most economic mobility of any place on earth in history, and that
Yeah.
remains true. The Wikipedia changed. You can actually go back and look at the change. I think it was 2020 where they changed the entry. But actually, it's always been us. Like, that's why everybody tries to move here. It's no
Right.
secret. Like, no one's trying to leave the U.S. and go to European countries, or like 0.001% a year, right? But everyone from other countries is trying to get into here. Everyone.
So we have freedom of speech and capitalism.
Free access to capital. Well,
Yeah.
what I was saying earlier is this: if you make money, no one will stop you, and no one will stop you from keeping that money, and no one will tell you how to spend that money, right? And you can get into any industry you want, which is not true in many European places.
Yeah, it must be awfully cold in Michigan. Look at Ron; he's frozen.
He's frozen cold. Poor guy.
Oh man! So it warmed up nicely today. You know, we got into up to 12 degrees today.
Oh, we got 42. The sun actually came up, which is good because we had freezing rain. I lost power for like 5 hours last night.
5 hours, with freezing rain, could have been a lot worse.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't complaining. Well, the important part was we got to watch the Patriots go to the Super Bowl. So now they're going to the Super Bowl. Terrible game. One of the worst football games I've ever seen, for sure. But we won. So, and and there were some good plays. And thank goodness we didn't keep playing at the end like we were playing in the beginning. I was ready to hang myself. I was like, you guys have got to be kidding me.
You see,
Like,
you say
what is
that
wrong
you say those sorts of things. It reminds me why I don't follow professional sports anymore, because I'm just tired of having my passions jerked around by a bunch of millionaires.
Well,
No, really, like I got super into the Vikings when that magical season that Brett Favre was playing for them.
Yeah.
And they were winning games. I got to watch Aaron Rodgers get sacked 8 times in the same game. You know,
Wow.
and then like Brett Favre threw that interception against the New Orleans Saints in the NFC playoff game, and it was just like, all that's gone. You know,
It's that's the thrill. Is it can be a one play game all the time. The Patriots did that. They got an interception at the last that sealed the game for them, and complete like that was the end of the game. That one catch right at the end because it was 2 minutes. It's like now they have possession. They don't have to do anything, and they didn't. They just sat on the ball till the game was over. So yeah.
And
Yeah.
correct me if I'm sorry. What were you saying?
All I was going to say is it gives me that my favorite joke that I make is that I watch sports religiously once or twice a year when something important's going on.
Yeah. Well, I was also going to ask, Father, is I presume sports betting is against Catholicism?
Not explicitly.
So like, not it's the sort of thing like I kind of want us to have positive law against it, but I don't think canon law can manage it if it's on your phone. Right? I think the phone changes it a lot. I think if you're getting pizza with your buddies and like you put $20 on the game, I think it's a waste of $20. I don't think that's a good use of your money, but you're probably not going to get yourself into trouble if you've got good friends, right? Like you're not going to be bankrupting each other over this. This will just be a little ways to just put a little bit of fun into it. It's the daggone phone mediation of it. Like our elites, the people who are running this country are just dumb, right? They see the discontent, they see the problems, and like, oh, let's legalize marijuana and sports gambling. That'll fix everything. It's like, no, you're just going to make people worse. And the people that you're going to make worse that are the people who are already like struggling. And now you're just going to like give them all sorts of opportunities for extra degeneracy. It's just a horrible idea. So, you know, it would be better if these sports gambling apps were illegal. And like this is unfortunately beyond the capacity of canon law to handle. I love canon law, but it can't do that. Like this needs to be a civil law thing, and whatever Supreme Court case or Senate bill or however this happened, it's really bad because it takes
sports.
money. I probably ruin sports too. Like I'm looking at the people who are ruining their lives, but it probably ruins sports too. I'll believe that.
Well, you didn't see the dust up in the NBA about the players throwing games and the refs throwing games and the huge already happened. And then now anytime an official in the NFL does something funny, people are all over it. Like, I bet he's getting paid off by DraftKings or something, right? Because again, you need a mafia. And when the mafia is not managing that, somebody else is. Like, these things have to get managed by something. Mm-hmm. And but I don't think the elites look down and go, oh, it's more like who's doing stuff. Oh, Elon wants to go to Mars. Maybe that's a good idea. Like that's the level of thinking they put into look. I've met some of these politicians. They're not.
I just think it could certainly have happened by the results of just being kind of dumb. Like, I don't think it was necessarily like lizard people plotting the destruction of the West. It's just like, no, this isn't what we need.
It's a measure of success problem. They see somebody who has a way to make a successful business, and they go, well, that's really then this is a good, competent person, and competence is good, and therefore what they're doing must be good, because that's the only morality and ethics they have access to, which is an awful lot of people. And that's not a problem if it's not your elites. Like, who cares? But when it's your elites, right? When it's the people in
that's like an animalistic way of assessing things, right?
Well, I think it's related to the binary thinking. I mean, I
Mhm.
think we've let people of low cognitive ability, maybe they have a high IQ, maybe they have a huge vocabulary, but they have low cognitive ability, right? They're binary thinkers into, you know, basically management or government of the large system, and they're bad at it. They can't handle it,
I
right?
mean, it certainly could be that. There could also be just really degenerate morals in there, right? So they're just like,
Well,
this is probably going to ruin things, but I'll get mine out. I'll get mine and I'll get out. And, you know, sorry that everybody else has to hold the bag on this one, but yeah, I'm really not that sorry.
well, when you can't think in anything but a binary, the morality doesn't play into it because you'll never play in that space ever. And this is what everyone's missing. In individualism, everybody can be a moral agent on their own authority and by their own skill set. The problem is that's objectively false. Everyone can't be a moral agent. Everyone can't play in the ethics and morality space. They can't even read Plato's Republic correctly. They can't even use the language correctly. Like they're still smashing two abstractions together like social justice and then building entire political theories from this. And I'm like, you're dumb. Like that's your problem. And people can't tell the difference because they hear abstractions, and abstractions can and usually will sound right to you because you'll make them sound correct the way you want to hear them. So social justice always sounds like a good idea.
This is just starting to get a little too close to the whole sin is just ignorance, you know, and I don't think you would actually believe that.
No, but the problem is that ignorance is a neutral state, right? Because you could know good and you could know bad, right? Or you could not know. The problem is that the neutral state, unmediated by outside forces, because this is where it comes in. This is the individualism, right? This is the perspective switch that the communists all use, right? Unmediated, the neutral position will tend towards evil every time. Every time.
Sure.
When you add time, you're going to go that way. That's why you have to be your brother's keeper. Like, and some people are going to have to keep the morals and ethics of the society together, and other people are just going to have to deal with that because you can't do that on your own. Some people can do it, but probably not you. And that's where everyone freaks out. They want to be able to do it themselves. And
this is why you need a church, right? Like an assembly of
Right.
people all pointing at the same thing. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Okay. No, okay. So the neutral position. I think technically in Catholic moral theology, we would say nations. Is that how you say it? Like just not knowing. I'm just giving you a little bit of Catholic vocabulary to help you navigate. When we say ignorance, we mean of things that you ought to know. Like there's like a duty to know certain basic precepts of the moral law, you know. And
that's a problem, right? Because if you have a duty to a moral law, but you have a low IQ, right? IQ works really well in the low end of the scale. Then what are you going to do? Like, how do you resolve of mice and men?
Well,
go ahead, Ron.
All right, and I'm not trying to push back, but doesn't the Holy Spirit reveal all truths to us? And I'm sorry if I'm clunky on this one, Mark, but the eternity is written on the hearts of men. And then I'm kind of pushing back and saying that when you are in and with Christ, no matter if you're intelligent or not, young or old, you know good and evil, and it is developed.
You have the capacity. I think you have the capacity to know.
Yeah. Well, and I'm and play nice, because if I'm making mistakes, because I saw it in your face. But it's when you receive the Spirit of God, he convicts you of sin and of righteousness.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, Mark, the solution to that. So there are going to be some people who can't ever have use of their reason, right? They've got
Yeah,
some sort of
Lenny. I think it's Lenny in Of
Yeah,
Mice and Men.
yeah, like he doesn't have use of his reason, right?
Right.
So he's not held accountable the same way that we wouldn't hold a child accountable for their actions because they
That's
don't have
fine.
use of their reason, right? So that's
Right.
that's an exception that we can make. And
That's the case that I'm putting forth. And I don't see, this is where we differ. That ain't an exception. Like, I'm just going to tell you, because I count and it only takes counting. That ain't the exception. That's the rule. Most people do not have the ability, because they're stuck in a binary, to do any kind of ethical or moral decision making whatsoever, which is why you get all the people talking to all the leftists going, "Ha, we've got you. You're inconsistent. You're a hypocrite." And the leftists go, "No, we're not." And they just move on with their day, and then they're shooting law enforcement.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, and
okay.
you know, like the solution is that you've got the authoritative representatives, you know,
Right.
who
Yeah.
can like guide people into saying, you know what, that's intrinsically evil,
Right.
and you got to stay away from that. And like, and
That's
like
what we need.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's
that's
all
what
I'm
I'm
saying
after.
is, yes, that's what you need. It is not imbued directly to you by any force necessarily, because that can't be true of everybody, because I look at the world and that's clearly not happening. It's
Yeah.
not
So
like, it's not super hard, right?
a way to think of this, Ron, my friend Ron, um,
Uh-oh.
is you know, sometimes things are given to the church as a whole, um, and the spirit is poured out, you know, differently on the individual members. And so, you know, somebody who's, let's say, a basic moral agent, you know, they're not, but they're unsophisticated in their capacity to reason, but they can still be held accountable for the basics. You know, they're going to need a lot of guidance in these things, and they might not ever be able to give guidance, you know,
Right.
beyond like the very basics of like, now listen, this is what you do. You go to church every Sunday, you treat people well, you don't drink too much. And like that's all they can manage, you know.
All
And
right.
like at that level, they're gonna be fine, you know. And you've probably met people who kind of operate on that level. And like, you know, sometimes they make a mess out of things because they're a little too rigid on something. And that's kind of sad, but they can usually avoid the greater evils, and we'll help them, you know, us clergy, you know, who you know, part of the filter with the philosophy and the theology is basically just you know, how's your thinking capacity? And then part of the filter with the living in community is, you know, can you play nice with the other kids in the sandbox?
Mhm.
And so still stand by the seminary system according to its basic bones. The system will work if you've got good men running it. So yeah, it's yeah, that's what. And so basically, the capacity to discern some of these things might not be given to the whole church.
Oh, that's interesting. That's it. So, Mark, I got a question for you because of the, pardon me, the non-binary thinking, and I'm fishing here because I don't have an answer. What about someone who has the Holy Spirit and talks with God, and God convicts them? You know, you're doing good, you're doing bad, and actually, at times, maybe you're okay. Is that binary, non-binary, or where does
No,
that fit?
if there's three states, there's three. Like, most of the things you do, like eating, like,
Mhm.
is inherently neither a plus nor a minus, right? Unless you overeat or undereat, and then
Right.
right? But then not in all cases, right? Because sometimes you're supposed to feast and sometimes you're supposed to fast, right? And so that nuance, to be able to say eating too much and eating too little cannot determine whether you're in the middle, you're on the plus side or the negative side of the register. It's not enough information, right? But the way you know it's not enough information is you have to be able to think of three things at the same time, and not just any three things. I was pointing this out in the comments earlier at the very beginning. You have to be able to say plus plus negative, or negative negative plus.
Yeah,
Because if
yeah,
you don't have those combinations, you don't
yeah.
have contrast to see, right? And you can substitute, neutrals for them too, right? But if you can't do that, you end up in the binary. And then what will happen, because it happens reliably, and all I'm saying is go look in the world, you'll see it in 4 seconds, right? You will go, this is good and this is bad. And then you will see people exactly switch sides, right? So they'll start making the opposite argument. I do have a video coming out on navigating patterns, probably tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, about this. There's a discussion where this happens a lot, and I keep pointing out they just switch sides. They didn't change anything. They just said, well, this is good and this is bad, but really this could be bad and then this would be good. They do it all the time. It's like people do it all the time. They're stuck in a binary. They have no neutral condition. They can't tell which is good and bad and why, which is really important. Like you have to know why fasting is bad, right? To know when not to do it. You have to know when feasting is bad to know when not to do it. Most of the time, you don't worry about it. You just eat your normal meals, everything will be fine.
So I might not have understood what you meant by binary then.
It's just two. Binary is just two. That's all it means. 1 and a 0.
And then like there's an implicit thing in there is like, the only reason you can see anything is because they contrast with each other. So the only reason you can see is because your monitor is producing, this black sweatshirt contrasting with the golden wood behind me. That's how sight works. And so a binary is always going to be like a good and a not so good, at least. So that's kind of an implicit thing in there that when you talk about these things, Mark, it's useful to point out. Implicit contrast in there.
The most common formula for binary thinking is thing anti-thing.
Right. So here's a good way to think about it, Ron. Right, and you'll be able to connect with this. Right, you could have somebody who's living a sinful life in the world, and they're miserable by that. Right, and then through the ministrations of some Christian and the power of the Holy Spirit, they decide that they are going to live in the church now. They might think, well, now that I'm in the church, everybody's going to be better. And it's like, well, it's a little more complicated than that. First off, you still need some work. And second off, Jesus promised us that there were going to be wolves in sheep's clothing, so like this is the right place to be, and you should stay in the boat, but just prepare to be disappointed by your priests, because it's going to happen. I'm going to disappoint you at some point.
You know what, though? As far as I'm not going to let you crucify yourself too much. I'm not going to be Peter like, no cross for you, not around me. But Father Eric Seltzer maybe disappoint you, but he'll come back and say, I'm sorry. But
I usually manage.
Yeah. And so, Mark, I'm starting to understand where you're coming from. And
Cool.
So what's the axe you're grinding? And I'm just throwing, like, what's your thing? Yeah.
It's not directly an axe to grind, right? It was the last 10 minutes of the last open mic where I was pointing out a way to spot this problem, right? And what it can do for you is it can tell you who to listen to immediately. Like if this person's just talking in a binary all the time, honestly, you just shouldn't listen to them, at least about that topic. But the problem is, in my experience, and again, you can really just write it down, right? Like the number of times people get caught in binary. It's not that hard to see once you know what to look for.
That's
A lot of
interesting.
people who get caught in a binary are
Mhm.
caught in lots of binaries on different issues. Maybe you shouldn't listen to them about anything because I
Huh.
think maybe they're never going to get there, right?
So that's politics. It seems like Democrat, Republican at this moment.
If people talk like that, yes, but like that doesn't,
Mhm.
just go run and look for Michigan because I'm sure it's still true. How many registrations for voters are there in Michigan? Are there 2? Are there Democrat? No, there are 3. What's the biggest bucket? Is it Democrat or Republican? It's not. It's independent. I
Really?
think that's still true in all 50 states, right?
And even if the voter
it's a false binary.
Even if the voter registration thing isn't actually true, it's like, no, you've got Democrats, Republicans, and swing voters.
Yeah.
That 100% happens.
It's
You can't run away from that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So this is why I say the political frame is the worst frame to use, because it's always a binary frame, and in a binary frame, you're never going to resolve anything. Ever.
Okay. So so the joke my dad used to say is, government is effective enough to not get anything done, and we don't kill each other. And it's just sarcasm, it's good Jewish humor.
That's technically true here. I mean, if you read the founding fathers, they're like, no, we really want the government gridlocked so that business can get on with business.
Right. It's kind of okay.
They're not unclear about this.
Right. Okay, so it's working.
Right. But also we do want, when there's an overwhelming agreement amongst, this is the silent part, amongst the elite. They don't frame it that way, but that's actually what they say. We do want them to be able to make a change, because that would mean the change was universal enough that it probably should be done. And then the caveat on that, Ron, and this is where everyone gets screwed up. Our government is unlike any other government because we have 2. We have a federal system and we have a state system. And the federal system is the lab manager running the lab or allowing the lab experiments to be run by the 50 state managers. Until you understand that about our government and how there isn't another government ever that's ever worked like that ever, you'll never understand the difference. You can't compare it to anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Because in Canada, right, like the provinces are basically just creations of the federal government, aren't they?
Yeah, and they run in lockstep because of the way the voting works in Canada. I'm not saying they don't even have a better system. I mean, I probably don't, but their paper system might be better than ours in terms of federal versus provincial power, but they play very different games with things like budgets. So like the healthcare budgets are province by province. They're not throughout Canada. So depending upon which province you happen to move to, because people do this they do it in the United States all the time, right? You move to the place with the best welfare if you need to be on welfare, and maybe that's what you should do, right? Like, fair enough. But that's a big problem in Canada because you can get different medical care based on which province you're in, because they have different budgets for the provinces. And the provinces have different amounts of money, and some of that money is taken away by the federal equivalent government of Canada, and then spread out to the provinces, which makes some people very upset because one of their provinces has a lot of oil, for example.
Guys,
let's trade Minnesota for Alberta. It would be such a pain in the butt for me personally, because I can walk to Minnesota from my house, but it might be worth it.
See, if you were on Twitter, you'd have already seen the let's do a battle between Canada and the United States, and the loser gets Minnesota meme, because that's already been I saw that yesterday and today. It's been wonderful.
And I don't watch the news anymore, and I live under a rock. Have you ever seen? It's a meme from Duncan Trussell. He's a comedian, Duncan Trussell, and he goes. And he's a hippie, or kind of, he's like, there's some poor kid with no phone sitting by a waterfall, not knowing how miserable and paranoid he should be right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that was a moment for me. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I don't know what's going on too much anywhere in the world. I know Iran is changing, and I hope, to be honest, I hope they do change, and Lord help them a lot.
12th time in my lifetime, Ron.
For Iran?
Yeah.
Well, I was a kid in 80.
They have uprisings every few years.
80 was when the Shah was booted out, and the Ayatollah came in.
That didn't work out well either, did it? So they had an uprising, and that didn't work out well, did it?
Okay, so for me, this is the end of the Ayatollahs. That's what I'm sensing.
Maybe.
And even if it is, does that mean they're going to get someone better? Because they didn't last time they switched.
You're right, but I think, and I got this from Jacob Federecci, and just in general, is maybe getting a Shah, one of the lineage of the Shah.
Yeah, there's a crown prince who would be in line for that succession.
Yeah.
And the kind of noises he's making is he would come in and he would be an interim, figure, and he would
I love it when they go, I'm just going to be here for a week.
No, they need monarchy in that part of the world. They can't do anything else.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm partial to monarchy more and more as time goes on. And if this guy's as noble a fellow as he sounds like, then he might be the guy for it.
They should keep him in there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I hope it happens. I actually have an acquaintance whose family is there. And I guess Jacob was from there.
Oh, yeah. His family fled when, you were reading news bulletins about the Ayatollah coming in.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So Michigan, all right, so that's Lord help them in Iran. And it's a weird, because I know we are to pray for the governments, and I'm like, Father, I'm willing to take correction on this one, because you pray those that are in power.
You pray for them to do good and not evil.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's always the implication. It's like
yeah.
Okay.
And there's just so much crazy, and I feel burdened by it. But anyhow, so Michigan is running amok, or
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
It's literally just Minneapolis, right? You can drive about an hour from here, and you can come to the Trump Superstore on Minnesota Highway 34, and it's just an amazing thing to see.
I want one. I want to go.
Well, you should come out here. We could go out there, and that's like the pathway to Lakes Country right there, and it's just the Trump Superstore. All things Donald Trump. It is just Minneapolis that we're talking about, but there's all sorts of nonsense going on there.
Are police getting shot at or shots?
Yeah. Yes. Somebody grabbed a flash grenade today.
Okay.
Darwin Award. Yeah. It's incompetent protesters, which should be no surprise, because they're stuck in a binary because they're communists, right? And they're just doing dumb things left, right, and people are getting shot, unfortunately. But you know what? If you have a gun and you bring one out where there's law enforcement,
I hate it because I don't trust the news at all. Oh, did I just get booted out?
You did.
You skipped.
I think I lost you.
So here's all you need to know, Ron. Don't plan any trips to Minneapolis.
Okay.
And pray for the folks there. There you go.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you. I got to go to bed here in a second, but I'm gonna bring you some good news. Star Trek, they tried to do like a next. It was called Star Trek, not Next Generation. It was like the new Star Trek and
Academy.
Star Trek, and it hurts my heart to even say the name. And I don't know if I'm getting convicted right now by the Spirit, because I don't want to celebrate someone else's failure, but it was very woke and very um, modern with gender issues and self-identity affirmations, and it got nuked. It got shredded. And I was proud to see my geeks, or not my geeks, we the geeks. Well, like, dude, I was a geek when it was not cool. I took the beatings as a geek, like the teasings. I liked Star Trek before it was a cool thing, and they shredded it. And I think rightfully so, because the director of this is bad. He goes, it was all about the message, and Star Trek Academy just happened to be the medium by which the message was getting out. And I was like, son of a gun. They were
Right,
gonna,
because this is the funny thing is that like Star Trek's always been progressive.
yeah.
Like it's always been kind of on the progressive end of things. But a lot of times, you know, me not particularly aggressive, and even as like a teenager when I was watching all these things, being sometimes annoyed by, like there was one that was really bad. It was like, oh, you know, we've outgrown such silly superstitions in the Federation, and we're just now reasonable on it. As a teenager, I'm like, yeah, that's not how it works.
Right.
But I'd say, you know, there was still a good story, you know, behind there. Not all the time. Some of the episodes were lame, but you know, you had the hope for like there'd be like a cool thing about like a time loop and you know space thing that was going to make crazy stuff happen, and you could have fun with it, you know. And, like if you don't even have that, there's nothing to watch, you know, because like the politics was always just kind of getting in the way of things.
Well, when I was a kid, like Star Trek was on. It was the land. They were landing on the moon. Like the man had not yet been on the moon, and Star Trek came on, and I remember they dealt with race issues, but it was in that sense, it wasn't preachy, but I do. It's interesting. It's what did it war?
So it's like they watched Star Trek and they got the wrong message, right? Like they had the good stories, and then they sometimes did some preaching, and they thought, oh, okay, so what you do is you do the preaching, and it's like, well, maybe, but you got to have a good story in there as well.
But Roddenberry, there's a famous story. So Nichelle Nichols runs into Roddenberry's office, and she says, I know what you're up to. I know what you're doing. You're writing moral plays. And Roddenberry didn't say anything. He just put his feet up on his desk and like didn't answer her. Because of course, like in hindsight, of course that's what you're doing. So if you have people stuck in binary thinking, do you think they can write moral plays? They don't know what morals is, and even if they did, they don't have the cognitive capacity to write moral plays.
Right, because they're only interesting if there's an interesting conflict there, right? If everybody's just agreeing about how we should all be good and not bad, and then you've got like and like something like Best of Both Worlds. This is next gen. I don't know if you were big on the next gen, you know, but like Picard has been, you know, assimilated into the Borg. He's been taken onto the Borg cube, and they've come up with like the fancy, you know, fancy weapon that might take him out. And like Riker fires it, and that's the climax of the season. And you got to wait until the next season to see what happens, right? And like that's what makes it interesting. It's like, man, our guy's over on that ship, and he's like the best that we have, you know. But he's been, you know, brought into this. Is it a worthwhile sacrifice for us to blow Picard out of the sky? And it's like that's an interesting morality play right there, you know, because it's not like intrinsically good versus intrinsically evil right there. It's like a military decision, and military decisions are always a mess. Nobody knows what they're doing. And that's what you're doing. So that sort of morality, if like, you know, like that's a really good morality play right there. And like if you don't have like a compelling drama at the center of that morality play, which oftentimes comes with like a charismatic and compelling villain.
Okay.
Like you go to Space Seed, you've got Khan showing up, right? And he's like this genetically modified human being. They had Ricardo Montalban playing him, very charming, handsome, and it's like, well, why shouldn't all the young yeomen run off with him, right? Like that's an interesting morality play right there. But if you don't understand why somebody might leave Starfleet to go with Ricardo Montalban,
Right.
then you're just going to write like ridiculous villains who are just like one-dimensional, right? And I don't know. This is definitely not the right terms to put this in, but I don't have anything ready to go at the moment. But it's like they're operating on such a really poor theory of mind,
Yes.
which is probably like a really poor theory of man that they can't
That's
understand. They can't understand why a guy like me would be opposed to the things that they think are good.
Right.
They just can't comprehend it.
And to be as fair as you can to them, they are in the tradition of sci-fi. The problem is that the worlds that they set up to explore the concepts they want to explore don't work. And that's why nobody likes the show, because they just don't work. Like, it doesn't work to sit kind of sideways in the chair and look like you're a cripple and still be a captain. You can't do both. You can have one or you can have the other, right? And so they're setting up a world, like even the ship doesn't make any sense, right? It's not connected. So they've got a starship and none of the parts actually seem to have a physical part connecting them. You want to talk about abstract, they have an abstract art starship. And then even the geeks can't think it would, and they could pull it off if they were smart enough, but they're actually not, and say like, well, we've got this new tractor beam technology and now we can replace all the steel, and they could make silly excuses, which would work because Star Trek makes silly excuses all the time. Like,
we're just having a good time.
We have a shortage of trilithium. What do they use for outsides?
Dilithium.
What is it?
For the what?
Outside for the steel.
Oh, the panels. I don't know that.
Yeah, I forget what their steel equivalent is called. Like, we have a shortage of that, but when we do this, right? And we
I used to know that though. I used to know that, and I forgot.
Me too. I used to know it too. I get swelling on the brain literally here, so I can feel my sinuses packing up. So my brain's not going to be able to pull it out. But yeah, no, the trilithium crystals are in the engine to make the antimatter reaction happen or something, and that's where all their power comes from. But yeah, they had something else it wasn't titanium, but it's the equivalent of titanium.
Unobtainium.
Unobtainium. Well, they had some of that too. But like, they could have made that work, but they didn't even try because they're not smart enough to know they need to, because they're positing a world that doesn't work. It's full of contradictions, and then trying to get people to buy in. And to be fair, that's one way to experiment with your ideas. Also, your ideas are terrible. Like, the proof is in the pudding. No one can watch it.
They did have one very realistic character in Star Trek Next Gen, and that was Lieutenant Barclay.
Yes.
If you remember him, he was the one who had the holodeck addiction.
That's right.
It's like, oh yeah, they understood. They understood that if they actually created this holodeck, why would you ever leave? Right? And then, like, of course, you just have Counselor Troy there, who's just enamored with you the second that you walk in, right? Because of course, that's what you would do with a holodeck. They don't have a theory of original sin that's gonna like say, oh.
Wait a second. There's also a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Total Recall.
Yeah.
Where they had, it was like a holodeck, except it was all in your head. Sorry.
Yeah. They just implant memories of a vacation that you can enjoy.
Yeah. All right. See, wow, we are geeks. This is pretty good. All right. This is, and by the way, just this, and also the last part of the victory with this is when Starfleet Academy came out, there was one critic who put up like a captain's chair with just a Spock doll with the sign. he got more views than Starfleet did.
It was like neurotic or something.
Yeah.
He did that on purpose.
So I feel like there's been a victory, and
How long? I mean, this is the question: is how long can Hollywood lose money? The answer is I'm not going to stay up to find out because it's dark outside now, and I've got an early start tomorrow. So we're gonna wrap this stream
that
up.
sounds good.
Good night, Father.
I got to go to sleep as well. I should get some sleep.
Good night, and God bless you all.
Good night, guys. Peace.